we since we are discussing Consultative Loya Jirga, you're the historian here, so can you explain when did this tradition of having Loya Jirga start actually?
Okay, so I mean, when we're talking about history, we obviously need to, put in the footnotes that there are always estimates as to when these things start. So I don't know. I don't personally know. I don't think anyone knows. I'm not sure about when the institution of Jirga began, but we can accurately say that it's a couple of centuries old, at least. Now, why do I say it's a couple of centuries old? Well, because since the beginning of the formation of the Afghan states or the Afghan proto-states, the Jirga, given the credibility and the respect it commands, especially amongst Pashtuns, has been used by rulers to legitimize either their rule or certain policies that they wanted to enact. So let's take it all the way back, right? All the way back to the early 18th century when Mirwais Khan Hotak in the Kandahar region, at the time Kandahar was not confined to the province it is today, it was a region of Loy Kandahar. When Mirwais Khan Hotak decided to rebel against the Safavid Persians, partly in response to their forcing Shi'ism on the local populace, he did so by consulting a jirga, as well as the fact that he went on a pilgrimage to Mecca, where he obtained a fatwa or a legal ruling from religious scholars in Mecca to sanctioning the revolt against the Safavid Persians. Okay, now we come, obviously, do you have any questions?
Yeah, that's one other aspect of Jirga that I wanted to add. Some aspects of Pashtunwali and even some aspects of how a Jirga is organized is not exactly in line with Islamic values and Islamic tradition. But one major theme in Pashtunwali is always reverence for the opinion of the scholar, the Imam.
Yeah, or the Sayyid.
The Sayyid, yes. So what Mirwais Khan Hotak did was basically showing how this was also a very important factor in the way decisions are made.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we can also say in the Islamic tradition, shura or consultation is something that's very strongly emphasized. So I guess, it's presented as something that quite naturally fits into, the necessity to consult amongst each other. But I mean, Mirwais Khan Hotak, there's a debate as to where we could say if that's the beginning of Afghan statehood. But what we can affirmatively say is the beginning of the beginning of Afghan statehood is Ahmad Khan Abdali, later to be known as Ahmad Shah Baba. So we know that in 1747 he was coronated as king of the Afghans, and there's something I want to make clear here. When I say Afghans, I'm talking about ethnic Afghans. So that there's the nationality Afghan, and historically Afghan has been a word used for ethnicity and is synonymous with Pashtuns. So when Ahmad Shah Abdali is characterized as king of the Afghans in the 18th century, this refers specifically to the Pashtuns. Now he's coronated as king of his own independent, let's say, proto-state or mini-state in Kandahar. And in Afghanistan, we're often told that this was done, with consultation with all of the other tribes and whatever, but actually it wasn't. What was actually done was many local tribes who were dispossessed, who were displaced, who were deported to different regions, were not part of this jirga. Okay, now for example, the Suleiman Khail were missing, the Hotak were missing, the Baloch, who had a on and off relationship with the Duranis, of which Ahmad Shah Baba was from. They were not consulted. The Kakars were not consulted. But what happened after... So these are the tribes in the Loy Kandahar region. So it naturally follows that if the tribes of the Loy Kandahar region were not part of this jirga, then Momans and Safis and other Ghilzays and Afridis and Wazirs and Masouds and Khataks, these were obviously not part of that jirga. What I have read, I believe, in Jonathan Lee's book was that there was actually a symbolic representation for Sunni Hazaras in this jirga, which is interesting because we also know that Ahmad Shah Abdali appointed the Sunni Hazara as mayor of Herat, as governor of Herat. But without further ado, obviously Ahmad Shah managed later on to co-opt these tribes into his army and into his state apparatus. Now, that's the story of, let's say, the beginning of Afghan statehood. Now we come to, let's say, modern statehood. Now, in 1921, Aman-Ullah Khan convened a Consultative Loya Jirga, and out of this Loya Jirga came the basic codes of the supreme state of Afghanistan. Or I got this from transliterated Farsi, so I'm not reading it directly from Farsi. I could make a mistake. Is the Nizamnameh Asasi Aliya Afghanistan. And now this forms part of the basic code. In 1923, Aman-Ullah Khan reconvenes a Loya Jirga once again to put forth a new constitution. The delegates of the Jirga overwhelmingly oppose the constitution that is put forth, but crucially, the constitution still passes. Okay, thanks to the support of
That's very interesting.
That's very interesting. And that's because the more important delegates decided that it was worthy to be passed, and as such, it was passed. Okay? Now, obviously, we know that in 1928 to 1929, there was a civil war in Afghanistan where people revolted against Aman-Ullah Khan, essentially imposing westernization and secularization of the country. And he was toppled by a man called Habibullah Kalakani, who was somewhat seen as a Robin Hood kind of bandit, who was the first non-Pashtun king of Afghanistan. He reigned for 9 months. He was a Farsi one from Kalakan in Shamali, hence the name. And he was overthrown by General Nadir Khan, who was a Mohammedzai from the royal clan, just like Aman-Ullah Khan, who had previously served as a military general. And Nadir Shah, with his 12,000 or so Massoud tribesmen, capture and loot Kabul. They sack it. He convenes a Loya Jirga. And obviously, by now we should know that if you're convening an assembly of people, you're probably deciding who's going to be in it, who constitutes this assembly. So in 1929, Nadir Khan convenes a Loya Jirga that crowns him as the new king of Afghanistan. But this isn't the end of it, because the Kohistanis, a lot of Tajiks from Habibullah Kalakani's region rebel against Nadir, as well as the Shinwaris in the east in Nangarhar. So after these rebellions are put down, in 1930, he reconvenes another Loya Jirga, and guess what happens? He is once again, surprise, surprise, crowned as king of Afghanistan. Okay, now in 1941, the British and the Russians are fighting the Second World War as allies. They had invaded Persia because Persia refused to comply with their demands. By this point it wasn't Persia, it was Iran. But they also demanded Afghanistan deport German, Italian and Japanese nationals as part of this war. Afghanistan, the Muhammad Hashim Khan, who's the prime minister, who's the brother of Nadir and the uncle of Zayed Shah of the time, he convenes a Loya Jirga that agrees to the deportation of these civilian contractors, provided they are given safe passage. Okay? And he also uses this opportunity to sneak in some legal reforms. So once again, we see that the Loya Jirga is quite a very convenient mechanism by which the ruler gains legitimacy for his policies. In 1977, a Loya Jirga is convened. Now, it's important because this Jirga is convened by Dawood Khan. Dawood Khan, we know, is the cousin of Zayed Shah. He topples his cousin in a coup and institutes a republic in 1973. Now, in 1977, 4 years later, Dawood Khan convenes a Loya Jirga that elects him as the president. Now, the major footnote in bold here is that there was no other candidate. He was the only candidate, and he convened the Loya Jirga that conveniently elected him as the president, right? Now, thankfully, Sangar, that's not something that Afghanistan is unique in, convening assemblies, electing a candidate who is the only candidate. There are many examples to go around.
Yes.
But the point here is that the Loya Jirga, once again, is instrumentalized by the state to legitimize or to condone or to give approval and sanctify the policies of whichever ruler is in Kabul. Now, finally, I think there was I'm not sure about Dr. Najib initiating a Loya Jirga, but in 2001, Mullah Omar, Mullah Muhammad Omar, convened a Loya Jirga in which he too gained the approval of tribal elders to not hand over Osama bin Laden because as a Pashtun and as an Afghan, he was honor bound to protect his guest. So now we have quite a context of the Jirga and the Loya Jirga. Now the Loya Jirga, being the Grand Jirga, generally tends to be assembled by the state. Okay, and when does it tend to be assembled by the state? It's not to enact reforms on labor laws or minor issues. No, we see that actually when it's a matter of a new constitution or a matter of the very monarch's legitimacy and claim to being a monarch, click of the fingers, the Loya Jirga is assembled, and very conveniently, even if they disagree, even if most of the delegates are against the ruler, as we see with Amanullah Khan, things go ahead anyways. Do you know if there were any Loya Jirgas initiated by Dr. Najib Sangar?
Yes, you see, there are many videos of Dr. Najib circulating among Afghan communists and secularists where they glorify him. Oh, look, he was so prophetic. And some of those videos are from the Loya Jirga of 1987. I remember...
So was this in the aftermath of the Masalihin Milli policy, national reconciliation? Okay.
Yes, so he came up with the idea of a national reconciliation. It was all his idea, yeah? And the Loya Jirga was obviously a jirga where people participated who were invited by him. So Hikmatyar,
naturally,
so Hikmatyar wasn't present at that jirga, but
Maulawi Khalis wasn't present, and all of the other guys.
He was not present. So all these major figures who are fighting him, they were not present in the jirga. But during the jirga, Najib was addressing them. He was addressing them as the enemies and the opponents who need to put down their arms and come and join him. So that's basically the jirga of Dr. Najib.
So it's just generally fits into the norm, we could say.
Yes, in that
respect, Najib policy
was very traditional.
A major policy needs to be announced. What do I need to do? Bang. Clap of the hands, it's the Loya Jirga. And obviously there's the irony that whilst Hikmatyar and Maulawi Khalis and Maulawi Muhammad Nabi and all of these guys are fighting against Dr. Najib and to whom this Jirga is addressed, they're either not invited or they've boycotted it.